Good evening. Welcome to Loveworld USA News. I'm Barbara Sam. First, a quick look at the top stories this evening. President Trump announces China to fully open markets to U.S. businesses following trade talks. Executive order signed to slash drug prices, targets big pharma profits. President Trump tours Gulf state amid Gaza crisis, Iran talks, and business push. American hostage Aidan Alexander freed by Hamas after 580 days in captivity. Dow soars over 1,100 points as U.S. and China agrees to temporary tariff cuts. And now to the news. President Donald Trump announced Monday that China has agreed to fully open its markets to American businesses, a development he describes as the most important outcome of weekend trade talks held in Geneva. Speaking at the White House, Trump said the move represents a major step towards fair economic relations between the world's two largest economies. This is something we've needed for decades. We've opened our economy to them. Now they're opening theirs to us, Trump told reporters. While the agreement has not yet been formalized in writing, both sides reportedly agreed to significant tariff reductions and expanded access for U.S. companies. The deal includes a temporary 90-day easing of tariffs, with U.S. duties on Chinese imports dropping from 145% to 30%, and Chinese tariffs on U.S. goods falling from 125% to 10%. Tariffs on autos, steel, and aluminum will remain unchanged for now. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, who led the talks, indicated further negotiations are expected in the coming weeks. And, quote, "This is just the beginning of a broader reset," Bessent said on Monday, signaling the administration's commitment to long-term economic restructuring with Beijing. Let's take a look.
We achieved a total reset with China after productive talks in Geneva. Both sides now agreed to reduce the tariffs imposed after April 2nd to 10% for 90 days as negotiators continue on the largest structural issues. And I want to tell you that a couple of things. First of all, that doesn't include the tariffs that are already on, that are our tariffs, and it doesn't include tariffs on cars, steel, aluminum, things such as that, or tariffs that may be imposed on pharmaceuticals, because we want to bring the pharmaceutical businesses back to the United States, and they're already starting to come back now based on tariffs. The talks in Geneva were very friendly. The relationship is very good. We're not looking to hurt China. China was being hurt very badly. They were closing up factories. They were having a lot of unrest. And they were very happy to be able to do something with us. And the relationship is very, very good. I'll speak to President Xi maybe at the end of the week. And they've agreed to open China, fully open China. And I think it's going to be fantastic for China. I think it's going to be fantastic for us. And I think it's going to be great for unification and peace.
President Donald Trump has signed a sweeping executive order aimed at slashing prescription drug prices in the U.S. by aligning them with the lowest rates paid in other developed nations, a policy the administration is calling most favored nation drug pricing. Under the new order, pharmaceutical companies will be required to offer American consumers the lowest price they charge globally or risk aggressive regulatory measures. Starting today, the United States will no longer subsidize the health care of foreign countries. Trump declared accusing drug makers of decade-long profiteering at the expense of U.S. consumers. The order also empowers the Department of Health and Human Services to bypass middlemen by allowing Americans to purchase drugs directly from manufacturers. If companies refuse to comply, regulators will impose pricing mandates and additional cost-cutting reduction measures. HHS Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who joined Trump at the announcement, called the policy a moment I never thought I'll see in my lifetime, end quote. While supporters celebrated the move as a major victory for consumers, industry groups pushed back. The Pharmaceutical Research and Manufacturers of America called the order a foreign-first pricing scheme that could jeopardize investment in U.S. innovation and lead to a greater dependency on China for medical supplies. Watch this.
President Donald Trump on Monday signed a sweeping executive order setting a 30-day deadline for drug makers to lower the cost of prescription drugs in the U.S. or face new limits over what the government will pay.
Our country has the highest drug prices anywhere in the world by sometimes a factor of 5, 6, 7, 8 times.
The order calls on the health department, led by Robert F. Kennedy Jr., to broker new price tags for drugs. If a deal is not reached, a new rule will kick in that will tie the price of what the U.S. pays for medications to lower prices paid by other countries. It's unclear what, if any, impact the Republican president's executive order will have on millions of Americans who have private health insurance. The federal government spends hundreds of billions of dollars on prescription drugs, injectables, transfusions, and other medications every year through Medicare, which covers nearly 70 million older Americans. Public health agency leaders will start meeting with drug companies to offer new prices over the next month. Drug makers argue threats to their profits could impact research to develop new drugs.
President Donald Trump began a strategic Middle East tour this week, visiting Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and the United Arab Emirates. While regional tensions in Gaza and Iran dominate international concern, Trump's itinerary highlights a dual mission: deepening U.S. ties with key Gulf allies and advancing economic diplomacy, including Trump-branded real estate ventures. Though not visiting Israel, Trump is engaging in high-stakes diplomacy behind the scene. His administration helped broker a ceasefire between Israel and Hamas that led to the release of an American hostage this week. Yet his pursuit of renewed nuclear negotiations with Iran and a potential Saudi-Israeli normalization deal has stirred unease in Tel Aviv, particularly as Iran inches closer to nuclear capability. The trip also carries a commercial dimension. Qatar has reportedly offered Trump a luxury Boeing 747-8 jet as a goodwill gesture, and real estate partnership in the Gulf are advancing. Critics warn this mix of statecraft and business may raise ethical concerns, but Trump's team insists the focus is economic renewal and regional stability. Meanwhile, Iran continues back-channel nuclear talks with U.S. officials via Oman, though no breakthrough has been reached, as Israel holds off further operations in Gaza pending Trump's visit. Allies and adversaries alike watch closely to see whether the U.S. president can balance strategic restraint with economic influence in a volatile region. Let's take a look.
We're not planning on stopping in Israel, but we will be doing it at some point, but not for this trip.
Israeli politicians have put a brave face on U.S. President Donald Trump's decision to bypass them on his visit to the Middle East this week. But it has fed Israeli concerns that its main ally, Washington, is losing interest. U.S.-Israeli hostage Aidan Alexander's release was secured in talks between Washington and Palestinian militant group Hamas that did not include Israel. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's office said on Sunday it was informed by the United States. Many Israelis have criticized their government over the deal, like Guy Bar-Natan in Tel Aviv.
It's frustrating that, America had to do our job to get him back. And if everybody thought that Trump will take off, Israel interest, he's taking care of his own business, he's thinking of America and his own restaurants. And
the news will be back after this break.
Another busy week at the White House.
It has been yet another eventful week in Washington.
The activity level is off the charts. The president dialed in. He is executing his agenda at a lightning fast pace. Here's something we rarely see in American politics. President Trump is actually keeping his campaign promises, and he's doing them as quickly as possible.
This administration's moving at political light speed, and they're just getting started.
We're going to have one shot at this, and no other president's going to do what I'm doing.
Goodbye
We love you. We will be back in some form. Have a good life. We will see you soon. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Official, former President Donald Trump will be running for president again in
Has Donald
2024.
Trump got the stamina and the will to do this again? He's come under such tremendous...
Everything is on the line in this election.
A busy day in the campaign world up in Butler today. Former President Trump holding a rally at 5 o'clock.
They just tried to kill President Trump.
Not even an assassin's bullet could stop him.
It feels like the climax of a superhero movie. The first act, up 2016. The second act, 2020. The third act, he almost dies. And then what happens?
Donald Trump will become the 47th president of the United States.
Rare in American politics, a presidential sequel.
He believes he has a, quote, mandate to bring common sense back to the country.
It's our time to take up the righteous cause of American liberty and begin the most thrilling days in the history of our country. This will be our greatest era. With God's help, over the next 4 years, we are going to lead this nation even higher, and we are going to forge the freest, most advanced, most dynamic, and most dominant civilization ever to exist on the face of this earth.
He has the opportunity to reset everything around the world.
Under President Trump's leadership, the message to America's enemies is loud and clear. Peace through strength is back.
No amount of hysteria, no amount of fear-mongering is going to shake the president's resolve.
This is the wholesale destruction of the liberal state. He is gutting liberal Washington, D.C. in a way that they say could be permanent.
47 means business. The White House is holding all the cards.
I return to the presidency confident and optimistic that we are at the start of a thrilling new era of national success.
The bottom line is whether you like Trump or you don't like him, you can't say that he's coming and not try to deliver, and he's doing so in historic fashion.
A tide of change is sweeping the country. Sunlight is pouring over the entire world, and America has the chance to seize this opportunity like never before.
Welcome back. U.S.-Israeli dual citizen Eden Alexander, 21, was released Monday after spending over 580 days in Hamas captivity, marking the end of a harrowing ordeal that began during the October 7, 2023 terrorist attacks. Alexander, a lone soldier serving in the Israel Defense Forces, IDF, was received by an elite IDF unit and is now undergoing medical and psychological evaluation in Riyadh. President Donald Trump praised the development, calling it great news and congratulating Alexander's family. Secretary of State Marco Rubio confirmed the administration's continued commitment to bringing all American hostages home, noting ongoing diplomatic efforts. The release comes amid heightened efforts by the U.S. to broker a ceasefire in the region. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu thanked Trump during a call on Monday and credited the U.S. for its role in the release. Alexander's family and community in Tenafly, New Jersey, celebrated his return with public gatherings and emotional tributes. As part of his reintegration, Alexander will receive full support from IDF medical and psychological teams and be reunited with his family in Ichov Hospital in Tel Aviv. Watch this.
Yo, yeah! Ay, 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 ay. איזה חזק אתה, אתה אוהב בתוך העידן. יואו, 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 כמה דאגנו. וואו. יואו. איזה ענק היה את הזה, מי זה? דלים. סואק. מה זה? הוא אינסן, הוא אינסן. מי קמאי? מי קיים?
U.S. stocks surged on Monday following a major breakthrough in trade talks between U.S. and China. The Dow Jones Industrial Average closing up to 1,104 points, its best single-day gain of 2025 so far. The rally was triggered by news that both nations agreed to temporarily reduce tariffs after weekend negotiations in Switzerland. The agreement lowers U.S. tariffs on Chinese imports from 145% to 30%, while China will cut duties on American goods to 10%. The development sparked investor optimism that the trade war may be de-escalating, fueling a broader-based market rally. The S&P 500 climbed 3%, and the Nasdaq Composite jumped 4%, boosted by gains in tech stocks tied to China. Major beneficiaries include Tesla, up 7%, Apple rose 6%, and Nvidia rose 5%. Retail and electronic firms with significant exposure to Chinese imports, such as Best Buy, Dell, and Amazon, also saw notable gains of 6 to 8%. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent described the talks as very productive and said further negotiations are expected in the coming weeks. While the market welcomed the tariff cuts, analysts cautioned that the deal is a temporary reprieve rather than a final resolution. Nevertheless, hopes for broader trade agreements help drive down recession fears and push Treasury yields higher. More than 400 British artists include Sir Paul McCartney, Elton John, Dua Lipa, and Coldplay have signed an open letter to Prime Minister Keir Starmer urging the government to protect their creative rights against what they described as the unauthorized use of their work by artificial intelligence systems. The protest comes amid debate over the proposed Data Use and Access Bill, which will allow AI developers to train their models on copyrighted material unless creators opt out. Artists argue that opt-out models enables mass exploitation of intellectual property without consent or fair compensation. The group supports an amendment but put forward in Parliament by Baroness Beebken Cardon. The measure would require AI companies to publicly disclose which copyrighted works are used in training their systems. Proponents say this level of transparency would establish accountability and prevent unauthorized use of music, literature, and film. Although the amendment was recently rejected in the House of Commons, it now heads to the House of Lords for another vote. The government has signaled opposition, citing an ongoing consultation, but creators warn without binding legal legislation, AI firms may erode the foundation of the UK's £126 billion creative sector. The news continues after this break. Stay with us.
The world is watching. Billions of hearts, billions of souls, each one a life that matters. And every day they're being touched by the power of the gospel because you gave our dearest partners. Through the Loveworld networks, the message of our Lord Jesus is reaching further than ever before, into nations where churches are silenced, into homes where hope had disappeared, into hearts where light had never shone, into every man's world. This is the year of completeness. And truly, we are everywhere. You, our highly esteemed partners, have taken your place in this divine mission, the mandate to complete the full preaching of the gospel in all nations of the world. Through your giving, our language-specific stations are now heard in corners of the earth where no preacher has ever stepped. You sponsored airtime that transformed lives, sending light into the darkest corners. You brought the Loveworld networks into homes, schools, offices by tagging your names to our ministry programs, sponsoring our studio upgrade around the world, and ensuring Pastor Chris in 1 billion homes is a reality. In 2025, we are taking bold steps to complete the full preaching of the gospel in our time through our Pastor Chris in 1 billion homes project. Together, we are fulfilling Matthew 24:14, and this gospel of the kingdom will be preached in the whole world as a testimony to all nations, and then the end will come. We are marching forward, flooding the nations with the truth of God's Word. Pastor Chris in 1 billion homes. No barrier is too high, no nation is too far, no home is unreachable. And the time is now. We call on our army of passionate partners across the globe. Be a part of Pastor Chris in 1 billion homes project today. Stand with the man of God. Stand with the Loveworld networks. Partner without limits. Let your giving echo into eternity. And together, let's flood the earth with the message of our Lord Jesus. For more information, please call the number showing on your screen. God bless you.
Welcome back. A U.S. chartered flight carrying 49 white South Africans landed in Washington, D.C. on Monday, marking the first arrivals under President Donald Trump's Afrikaner Refugee Resettlement Initiative. The group is set to continue to Texas, where they will begin the resettlement process. The move follows President Trump's assertion that white Afrikaner farmers are facing racial discrimination and even genocide in South Africa. Claims that South African officials have strongly denied. Foreign Minister Ronald Lamola dismissed the allegation, saying no such persecution exists and that police data does not support Trump's claim. The refugee administration's fast-tracked without the involvement of the United Nations Refugee Agency, known as UNHCR, have drawn sharp criticism from Democratic lawmakers. Senator Janine Shaheen called the decision baffling, noting that thousands of other asylum seekers remain in limbo amid Trump's broader restrictions on immigration. Despite lacking support from international bodies, the Trump administration defended the policy, citing safety concerns for white farmers. South African statistics show 44 farmers occurred on farms in 2024, with 8 victims identified as farmers. Critics argue the data does not indicate race-based targeting and that the policy is politically motivated. The resettlement program comes amid heightened tensions between the U.S. and other South African, particularly over Pretoria's stance on Israel and domestic land reform laws that allow for state seizure of land without compensation. While South African government maintains the law is aimed at redressing historical injustices, Washington has criticized it as a threat to property rights. Let's take a look.
49 white Afrikaners left on Sunday evening. However, the Minister of International Relations and Cooperation, Ronald Lamola, says they are not refugees.
There is no persecution of white Afrikaner South Africans in South Africa. This has been proven by a number of statistics in our country, including the police reports, which don't back that assertion of persecution of white South Africans on the basis of their race. The crime that we have in South Africa affects everyone, irrespective of race and irrespective of gender.
Minister Lamola has also confirmed that President Ramaphosa will meet his U.S. counterpart.
The working visit of President Ramaphosa to the U.S., I can state that it's at an advanced stage. The presidency, I believe, will soon announce the dates and when the engagement is going to happen. I can only say that it's at an advanced stage.
Former Philippine President Rodrigo Duterte has been elected mayor of his hometown, Davao City, while currently detained at the International Criminal Court, ICC, in The Hague. Earlier but sustainable partial results confirmed the 80-year-old leader's victory on Monday, marking a dramatic twist in the country's politically charged midterm elections. Duterte was arrested in March and extradited to the Netherlands to face charges over thousands of debts during his controversial anti-drug campaign, remained on the ballot because he has not yet been convicted. His win maintains the Duterte family's decision-long hold on the Southern power base, with son Sebastian elected vice mayor and other family members reclaiming local posts. The midterms, in which 18,000 seats were contested, have evolved into a fiercely rivalry between the Duterte and Marcos dynasties. Vice President Sir Duterte faces possible impeachment following a vote initiated by allies of President Fernando Bongbong Marcos Jr., with Senate votes now pivotal to her political survival. Both camps pushed for dominance. Unofficial results from 68% of votes tallied suggest the Duterte bloc made gains. Key allies Christopher Bong, Go, and Ronald Bateau de la Rosa have secured top Senate spots, while many candidates endorsed by Marcos fell short. The race for the remaining Senate seat remains highly competitive. The election saw long lines, technical malfunctions, and instances of violence. Yet despite high temperatures and political tensions, Filipinos turned out in force, underscoring the enduring appeal of personally driven politics in the country. Just before we end the news, a quick look at tomorrow's weather forecast. And to end the news today, a quick recap of the headlines. President Trump announces China to fully open markets to U.S. businesses following trade talks. Executive order signed to slash drug prices, targets big pharma profits. President Trump tours Gulf states amid Gaza crisis, Iran talks and business push. American hostage Eden Alexander freed by Hamas after 580 days in captivity. Dow soars over 1,100 points as U.S. and China agree to temporary tariff cuts. And that's the news for today. Join us at the same time tomorrow for more news. I'm Barbara Sam. Good night and God bless you.